She was cheated on. Then her boss whispered, "You deserve better." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The night Melissa Harper discovered her boyfriend had been cheating on her, the world didn't crash in one loud explosion. It crumbled quietly, like a stack of papers slipping off a desk, silent, humiliating, and painfully ordinary. She had planned a surprise dinner for their 3rd anniversary, a simple meal in her tiny apartment, candles bought on clearance, and a store-brand cake with slightly smudged icing. But when she walked into his place an hour early, with a bag of takeout and a heart full of hope, she found him in the arms of someone else. For a moment, Melissa couldn't breathe. Her fingers went numb. Her vision blurred. She muttered an apology, even though she didn't know what she was apologizing for, then backed out of the apartment like a ghost who had wandered into the wrong life. She walked for blocks under the cold evening air, clutching the plastic bag of now pointless dinner until the handles cut into her skin. When she finally reached her own building, she climbed the stairs with stiff legs, locked the door behind her, and collapsed onto the floor. She didn't cry loudly. She didn't scream. She just sat there, staring at the dark room, listening to the soft hum of the old refrigerator and thinking, over and over again, why wasn't I enough? By the next morning her eyes were swollen, her voice hoarse, and her reflection in the bathroom mirror looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. But she still forced herself to go to work. Rent didn't care about heartbreak. Utility bills didn't pause for emotional devastation. And Melissa, assistant to the CEO of Westbridge Medical, had never missed a day. She walked into the glass building with her shoulders tight and her gaze low, hoping no one would notice the puffiness under her eyes or the way her hands shook slightly as she held her coffee. She made it through the lobby, the elevator, the hallway, but the moment she stepped into her boss's office to place the morning documents on his desk, her breath snagged. Ethan Ward looked up from his laptop. Tall, calm, sharply dressed in a charcoal suit, he had the kind of presence that filled a room without raising his voice. He studied her face for half a second, long enough to see what she was trying to hide. "Melissa," he said softly, and the sound of her name almost unraveled her. She swallowed hard. "Sorry, I'm fine. Just didn't sleep much." She tried to place the files down, but her hand trembled and one folder slipped, scattering papers across the floor. She gasped and dropped to her knees to gather them, but her tears blurred the text, and her fingers fumbled helplessly. I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't know what's wrong with me today." Ethan was beside her before she even realized he'd stood up. He crouched down, his movements controlled and careful, picking up the papers she couldn't. When she reached for one, her hand brushed his, and he paused, looking at her again, really looking this time. His voice dropped to a low murmur meant only for her. "Melissa, tell me what happened." She shook her head, embarrassed, humiliated, wishing she could sink into the floor. "It's nothing. It's stupid." A long silence stretched between them, heavy with everything she wasn't saying. Then Ethan leaned in just a little closer, his tone steady and unexpectedly gentle. "Someone hurt you." The words weren't a question. Melissa's throat tightened. Her vision blurred again. She didn't trust herself to speak. Ethan's hand moved as if to touch her shoulder, then stopped, hovering, asking permission without words. When she didn't pull away, his fingertips brushed lightly against her back, steadying her trembling breath. And then, in a voice so quiet she almost wondered if she imagined it, he whispered, "You deserve better." The room seemed to still. The air thickened. Something inside her, something bruised and aching, shifted at those 3 words. She looked up at him slowly, her eyes glossy, her voice a broken whisper. "Do I?" Ethan held her gaze, unwavering. "Yes," he said, "more than you know." And in that moment, Melissa didn't feel so invisible anymore. She didn't feel weak, or pathetic, or like the woman who had been left behind. For the first time since last night, she felt seen. But she had no idea that this quiet mourning, this quiet heartbreak, and this quiet whisper were only the beginning of something that would change both of their lives forever. For the rest of the day, Melissa moved through the office like a shadow drifting down polished hallways. She answered emails, scheduled meetings, prepared documents, but everything she touched felt a little heavier, a little blurrier, as if heartbreak had wrapped itself around her wrists and ankles. Still, Ethan's whisper echoed in her mind like a small, steady pulse. You deserve better. She tried not to replay it. She tried not to imagine the look in his eyes when he said it. But sometimes a single moment slips under all the armor a person has built, and once it is there, it refuses to leave. When lunch came, she slipped into the small break room, hoping for a few minutes alone. She sat at the corner table with a sandwich she could barely taste. Every time she blinked, she saw her ex and that other woman tangled together in the soft glow of his apartment lights. Her stomach twisted. Her eyes burned. She bit her lip, forcing the tears back down. She did not hear the footsteps until someone gently cleared their throat. Melissa looked up and felt her breath catch. Ethan stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled up, jacket off, a quiet seriousness written across his face. May I sit? He asked. She nodded, stunned. Ethan never ate in the break room. Never. He always met clients or worked straight through lunch. Yet here he was, pulling out the chair across from her like this was the most natural thing in the world. I checked your afternoon schedule, he said softly. You have a heavy load. I wanted to make sure you were all right before the rest of the day hits you. She swallowed. I am fine, she whispered, though she knew he could hear the lie in every syllable. His gaze lowered to her untouched sandwich. You have barely eaten. She looked away. It is hard to stomach food right now. A gentle silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, just full of things neither of them had the courage to say. Finally, Ethan leaned forward, lowering his voice. Melissa, whoever hurt you does not deserve the space they are taking up in your heart. She froze. He continued, his tone steady and careful. You are kind. You work hard. You make this entire company run. Anyone who chooses someone else over you is a fool. Her chest tightened. Do not say that, she whispered. You do not know everything. I know enough, Ethan said. His expression softened. And I know pain when I see it. Melissa felt something inside her buckle. She looked down at her hands, noticing how small they seemed compared to his. I thought he loved me, she said quietly. He let me believe it for years. Love is not something people let you believe, Ethan replied. It is something they prove. The words landed with a weight that made her blink hard, swallowing the emotions rising in her throat. She took a shaky breath. Why are you being so kind to me? Ethan hesitated. Just for a moment. Just long enough for her to sense there was more beneath the surface of that question than she had intended. Because, he said finally, no one should have to go through a day like this alone. Her heart stuttered. She had never heard him speak this softly. She had never realized how warm his voice could be when it was not filtered through board meetings and company memos. Suddenly his phone buzzed. A meeting reminder. He stood slowly, as if he did not want to break the moment too quickly. Take the afternoon at your own pace, he said. If you need to step outside for air, do it. I will cover anything urgent. She stared at him, stunned again. You would do that? For you? He said. Yes. Then he paused, as if weighing something, and added, you are stronger than you feel right now, and you are going to get through this. Their eyes met for a long, quiet second, and for the first time since the night her heart shattered, Melissa felt something warm flicker beneath her ribs. Not romance. Not yet. Just possibility. When Ethan finally left the room, the air seemed to shift behind him, leaving Melissa alone with her sandwich, her shaking breath, and a single unexpected truth. Someone in this building actually cared. And she had no idea how deeply that single fact was about to change everything. The rest of the week unfolded with a strange new rhythm, one Melissa was not used to. Every morning she arrived at the office still carrying the quiet ache of betrayal. But every morning, she also noticed something else, something she could not ignore. Ethan was watching her, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in a way that made her feel seen, as if he was checking to make sure she had not collapsed somewhere between the elevator and her desk. He never hovered, never crossed boundaries, but his small gestures built a kind of steady warmth she had not felt in years. A fresh cup of coffee appeared on her desk before she arrived. A note in the corner read, "Just breathe." When she stayed late, he passed by casually, pretending to check on a project, then reminding her she deserved rest more than paperwork. It was subtle, gentle, consistent. The kind of kindness that slipped under her guard without asking permission. On Friday afternoon, Melissa stepped outside the building at the end of her shift, rubbing her arms against the cool spring wind. She expected to walk to the bus stop, go home to her quiet apartment, heat up leftover soup, and maybe cry again if a sad commercial happened to play on television. But life, as it often does, had a different plan. Melissa. She turned, startled. Ethan stood behind her, one hand tucked into his coat pocket, the other holding his briefcase. The fading sun painted a golden outline along his jawline, making him look more like someone out of a dream than a man she reported to every morning. "I did not mean to scare you," he said. "I just wanted to make sure you got home safely." She blinked. "I am just taking the bus." "I know," he replied. "But that does not mean you should walk alone to the stop." Her pulse kicked up a little. "You do not have to do that." "I know," he said again, more softly this time, "but I want to." They walked side by side, the city humming around them. Melissa kept her eyes on the sidewalk, trying to steady herself. She had not expected this. She did not know what to do with the warmth spreading through her chest. When they reached the bus stop, Ethan glanced at the route display and frowned slightly. "You will be waiting at least 12 minutes," he said. "It is getting colder." She shrugged, hugging herself. "I am used to it." "You should not have to be," he murmured. Then, before she could ask what he meant, a sudden gust of wind cut through the street. Melissa shivered hard, clutching her thin jacket. Ethan reacted instantly. Without hesitation, he slipped off his coat and draped it around her shoulders. She stiffened, her breath catching, the fabric still warm from his body. "Ethan, you did not have to." "Melissa," he interrupted gently. "You have carried enough this week. Please let someone else carry something for you." She could not speak. She could barely think. Her ex had never noticed when she was cold. He had never offered his jacket, never slowed his pace to match hers, never held her pain with the careful respect Ethan showed her now. She felt tears threaten to rise again, but this time they were not made of sadness. They were made of something quieter, something she had not felt in a long time. Safety. The bus arrived with a hiss of brakes. She stepped up onto the first stair, then turned back to him, gripping the lapel of his coat. "Thank you," she said, her voice low but steady. Ethan held her gaze, his expression unreadable but undeniably soft. "Text me when you get home, so I know you are all right." She froze. "You want me to text you?" "If you are comfortable with that," he said. She hesitated, then nodded. "I am." She boarded the bus, found a seat near the window, and watched Ethan through the glass. He did not leave until the bus pulled away and she disappeared from view. On the way home, her phone buzzed. A new message. From Ethan. "You deserve better. Do not forget that tonight." Melissa clutched the phone to her chest, her heart pounding in a way that felt frightening and hopeful all at once. And for the first time since her life fell apart, she wondered if the universe was quietly stitching something new together in the space where she had been broken. Over the next few days, something shifted in Melissa's routine, something she could feel even when no one else seemed to notice. She woke up a little earlier, brushed her hair a little smoother, and walked into the office with a steadier breath. The heartbreak was still there, lingering like a bruise, but it no longer controlled every step she took. And Ethan's coat, still hanging neatly on the hook inside her apartment, felt like a quiet reminder that kindness existed in places she had forgotten to look. On Tuesday morning, as Melissa stepped into the lobby, she saw her ex standing near the security desk. Her heart lurched painfully. He was holding a cup of coffee, wearing the same smug expression she once mistook for confidence. He spotted her and lifted a hand. "Melissa," he said, striding over as if he had any right to approach her after what he had done. "I have been texting you. You did not answer." She kept her voice firm. "I blocked you." His eyes widened in disbelief, then narrowed slightly. "Look, I made a mistake. We can fix this, all right? You know we work. We always have." She almost laughed. Always have. He had betrayed her trust, shattered her certainty, and now he thought a half-hearted apology in the lobby of her workplace could reverse all of it. "No," she said. "We do not work. You made that very clear." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You are emotional. I get it. You will calm down." Her stomach twisted at the condescension in his tone. Before she could step back, a shadow appeared behind her. A familiar voice, calm and cool, cut through the tension. She said no. Melissa turned slightly. Ethan stood there, hands in his pockets, gaze steady on her ex. His presence was so composed that it made the entire lobby feel smaller. Her ex scoffed. "This is none of your business." "Melissa is my employee," Ethan replied calmly. "Her safety and her comfort are absolutely my business." Her ex glared at her. "So this is who you are running to now?" Melissa's voice shook, but she forced the words out. "I am not running to anyone. I am walking away from you." The security guard approached, sensing the tension. Her ex finally muttered a curse under his breath and stormed out of the building. The moment he disappeared beyond the glass doors, Melissa exhaled, her hands trembling. Ethan stepped closer but stopped at a respectful distance. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though her knees felt weak. "I did not expect to see him here. People like him show up when they feel control slipping," Ethan said, quietly. "But he does not control anything anymore." His words sank into her, warm and grounding. For the rest of the morning, Ethan checked on her with small glances during meetings and quiet pauses when he passed her desk. Not intrusive, just reassuring. And Melissa, despite her best attempts to stay composed, felt those tiny moments settle in her heart like sunlight through an open window. By late afternoon, she finally stepped outside to take a breath, leaning against the cool stone wall of the building. She closed her eyes, letting the soft breeze wash over her. A moment later she heard footsteps. She knew the rhythm of those steps now. Ethan stopped beside her, not too close, not too far. "I wanted to make sure you were truly all right after this morning," he said. She opened her eyes slowly. "I am better than I was." He studied her face for a long moment, his voice dipping lower. "You handled yourself with strength." She let out a shaky laugh. "I did not feel strong." "Strength is not about feeling," he replied. "It is about choosing not to break, even when someone tries to push you." His words struck something deep inside her. She stared at him, noticing the tiny details she never allowed herself to notice before. The way a small crease formed between his brows when he was concerned, the softness in his eyes when he looked at her, the warmth in his voice reserved only for her. She swallowed hard. "Why are you doing all of this?" Ethan hesitated, his gaze holding hers as if he was searching for the right answer. Finally he said, "Because you matter more than you realize." Her breath caught. For a heartbeat, the world around them seemed to fade into a quiet hum. And for the first time, she wondered if this gentle, steady man had been carrying something unspoken long before her heart ever broke. In the days that followed, Melissa noticed a change she could not quite name. It was not that her heartbreak vanished. Pain does not disappear that easily. It was more like the sharp edges had softened, replaced by something warmer, something steadier, something that flickered every time Ethan's presence brushed against her day. On Thursday morning, she arrived early, hoping to settle into her work before the office buzz fully kicked in. The building was quiet, sunlight just beginning to spill through the tall windows. She set her bag down, powered on her computer, and began sorting through the morning reports. A few minutes later, she sensed someone standing at her desk. She looked up and her heart stuttered. Ethan held 2 coffees, one in each hand. "I guessed your order right the first time," he said, placing 1 cup in front of her. "So I thought I would try again." She blinked, touched. "You really do not need to keep doing this." "I know," he replied, a faint smile tugging at his lips, "but I want to." Her pulse quickened. Those words were becoming dangerous. Ethan lingered for a moment longer than usual, then slowly stepped back. "I have a board meeting in an hour. If you need anything before then, I will be in my office." She nodded, watching him walk away with that same composed stride she had admired since the first day she started working at the company. But now, it felt different. Now she noticed every detail. Later that afternoon, an unexpected storm rolled through the city. Rain hammered against the windows as thunder rumbled in the distance. Half of the office rushed to leave early, but Melissa stayed behind to finish the last batch of documents Ethan needed for the evening meeting. As she gathered the papers, she realized she had forgotten to bring her umbrella. She sighed softly. It was going to be a long, wet walk to the bus stop. When she stepped into the hallway, Ethan emerged from the conference room at the same time, rolling up his sleeves as if he had been fighting a storm of his own inside that meeting. He noticed the files in her hands and slowed. "You stayed late again." She shrugged gently. "I wanted to finish this for you." His eyes softened. "Melissa, you have done enough for today. Let me drive you home." Her heart skipped. You do not have to do that. I know, he said quietly, but I want to. There it was again. That phrase. That careful, dangerous phrase. She hesitated, unsure if it was appropriate, unsure if she should accept, unsure of what it would mean. Ethan saw the hesitation and took a small breath. It is just a ride. Nothing more unless you want it to be. Her cheeks warmed. She nodded slowly. All right. They rode down the elevator in a hush of soft music and dim lighting. When they stepped into the underground parking garage, the storm's echoing roar made the space feel both cavernous and intimate. Ethan unlocked his car, and as she climbed in, she could not help but feel the flicker of something she had buried long ago, the possibility of trust. The drive was quiet at first, but not in a lonely way. The rain pattered against the windshield in calming rhythms. City lights shimmered in blurred streaks. After a moment, Ethan spoke, his hands steady on the wheel. When you stood up to your ex in the lobby, I was proud of you. She swallowed. I did not feel strong. I felt terrified. Strength is not the absence of fear, he said softly. It is choosing to move despite it. She let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. Why do you care so much? Ethan's hands tightened slightly on the wheel, not in tension, but in vulnerability. Because, he said, eyes forward, voice lower than she had ever heard. You deserve a man who shows up for you. A man who sees you. A man who does not take you for granted. And I want to be that man, if you let me. Melissa's breath hitched. The confession hung in the space between them like warm light. She stared at him, heart racing, unsure how long she had waited for someone to speak to her with this kind of sincerity. The car slowed as they reached her apartment building. Ethan put the car in park, but did not unlock the doors yet. He turned toward her gently. I'm not asking for an answer now. I just need you to know that you are worth more than the pain you have been carrying. She felt tears gather, but this time they were soft, grateful tears. Ethan, she whispered, I do not know what comes next. That is all right, he said. Whatever it is, you will not face it alone. She stepped out of the car slowly, his coat still warm around her shoulders. And as she walked toward her building, she felt something she had not felt since the night everything broke apart. She felt like the universe was quietly rebuilding her life piece by piece, starting with the man waiting in the driver's seat behind her. Over the next few days, Melissa found herself replaying Ethan's words every time she woke up, every time she walked into the office, and every time she caught his gaze lingering on her just a second longer than necessary. His confession in the car had not frightened her, but it had shaken something loose inside her, something she had held tightly shut for far too long. She moved through her routines more thoughtfully now, aware of the soft, invisible line that had formed between them, aware that something delicate and real was unfolding even if neither of them dared to name it yet. On Monday morning, the office was unusually busy. A major investor presentation was scheduled for noon, and staff hurried across hallways with stacks of papers and tablets clutched to their chests. Melissa was reviewing the final slides when she heard raised voices down the hallway. It sounded tense, sharp, almost hostile. Her heart quickened when she recognized the tone. It was her ex. She stood up, pulse pounding. What was he doing here again? She stepped into the hallway just as he turned the corner and spotted her. His expression twisted between desperation and anger. Melissa, we need to talk. She stiffened. No, we do not. He moved toward her quickly, lowering his voice but not his intensity. You have been avoiding me. You did not answer my calls. You blocked my number. You embarrassed me in front of people. She kept her chin up. You embarrassed yourself. His jaw clenched. You think you can just walk away from everything we built? You destroyed it, she replied quietly. I do not owe you anything now. Before he could respond, Ethan stepped out of the conference room, his expression instantly shifting when he saw the scene. He walked toward them with calm, controlled steps, but there was a protective edge in his eyes. Is there a problem here? Ethan asked, his voice low but firm. Her ex scoffed. Why do you keep inserting yourself into her life? This is between us. Ethan's gaze did not waver. You came into my building. You approached my employee. That makes it my business. Her ex threw his hands up. So that is what this is? You two are what, dating now? Melissa felt heat rush to her cheeks. She opened her mouth to speak, but Ethan stepped in smoothly. That is not your concern. Her ex scoffed, bitterness dripping from his words. She is just confused. She still loves me. She always comes back. He reached for her wrist. Before he could touch her, Ethan stepped forward, placing himself between them with swift, unmistakable intention. "Do not touch her." His voice was still calm, but the quiet steel in it made Melissa's breath catch. Security appeared moments later, alerted by the tension. Her ex was escorted out of the building while he shouted over his shoulder, "You will regret this, Melissa. He is your boss. He is using you." His voice faded as the elevator doors shut. Silence fell over the hallway. Melissa pressed her hands to her trembling chest, trying to steady her breath. Ethan turned to her slowly. "Are you all right?" She nodded shakily. "I am just tired of him showing up everywhere." "He will not show up again," Ethan said, his tone controlled but carrying a promise beneath it. "I will make sure of that." She looked up at him, vulnerability flickering across her features. "He said something. He said you might be using me because you are my boss." Ethan's expression softened immediately. He stepped closer, keeping his voice gentle, steady, undeniable. "Melissa, I would never use you. I have never cared about anyone's well-being in this company the way I care about yours." Her heart fluttered painfully. But what if people start talking? What if they think there is something inappropriate happening? Ethan held her gaze, his voice warm and grounded. "Let them talk. What matters is the truth. And the truth is that you are strong, capable, and deserving of respect. Anything that grows between us, if it ever does, will be built on honesty, not secrecy." Her breath hitched at the implication. She felt the world tilt slightly, like a door quietly opening that she had not been brave enough to try before. Ethan cleared his throat gently. "You should take a few minutes to breathe before we start the investor presentation. I will cover for you." She nodded, grateful, feeling the tremor in her hands slowly fade. As she walked toward the break room, her mind swirled with too many emotions to name. Fear, relief, healing, and something soft blooming at the edges of her chest. Something that felt like the early shape of hope. Meanwhile, behind her, Ethan watched her go with a look that said everything he had not spoken out loud yet. Something was changing between them, and for the first time, neither of them seemed afraid of what that meant. The investor presentation came and went, but Melissa barely remembered any of it. She went through the motions, organized documents, clicked through slides, answered questions when needed, but her mind kept drifting back to the hallway, to the moment Ethan stepped between her and her ex with absolute certainty in his voice. Something about that moment lodged itself deep in her chest, something solid and warm that refused to fade even as the workday ended. By late evening, most of the staff had already gone home. The office lights dimmed slowly, leaving soft reflections on the polished floors. Melissa finished her last email and rubbed her tired eyes. She stood from her desk, gathering her bag, when she noticed Ethan's office door still cracked open. That was unusual. He always stayed late, but never with his door open. She hesitated, then stepped closer. Inside, Ethan sat at his desk, leaning back in his chair, his tie loosened, the tension from the day visible in the faint lines at the corners of his eyes. He looked up when he heard her footsteps. "You are still here," he said softly. "I did not realize how late it got." She smiled faintly. "I was going to say the same to you." He motioned toward the chair across from him. "Sit with me for a moment." She did, feeling the comfortable hush settle between them. Rain tapped lightly against the wide office windows, the storm from earlier returning in a gentler form. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. It was the kind of silence that felt safe rather than uncomfortable. Finally, Ethan exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "I want to apologize for today," he said. She blinked. "For what?" "For stepping in during your conversation with your ex," he replied. "I did not want to overstep." She shook her head immediately. "You did not overstep. You protected me." His gaze softened. "I want you to feel safe here, Melissa. Not just because you work for me, but because you deserve that everywhere." She swallowed, her voice turning quiet. "No one has ever said things like that to me before." He leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees. "Then they never saw your value. Not the way they should have." His voice carried a sincerity that made her chest tighten. She looked down at her hands, twisting slightly in her lap. "Sometimes I worry," she admitted, "that the way you treat me, the kindness you show me, is just you feeling sorry for me." Ethan's jaw tightened, subtle but unmistakable. He stood up slowly, walked around the desk, and leaned against the front edge, folding his arms while still giving her space. I do not feel sorry for you, he said firmly. I admire you. I admire the strength it takes to wake up after heartbreak and still give your best. I admire the integrity you show in every decision. And I admire the courage you showed today. Melissa's breath trembled. I did not feel courageous. Courage does not feel like courage when you are living it, he replied quietly. It feels like trying not to fall apart. And you did not fall apart. Her eyes met his, and something unspoken passed between them, something fragile and powerful all at once. Ethan hesitated, his voice softening. Can I show you something? She nodded. He walked to the file cabinet behind his desk and pulled out a small envelope. He held it out to her. I was not sure when to give this to you. Melissa opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a printed certificate from the company's leadership committee, awarding her Employee of the Quarter. Her breath caught. Her name was printed at the top, bold and clear. I did not know. You earned it weeks ago, Ethan said. Before everything happened. Before your ex showed up. Before any of this. She felt her throat tighten. Why did you wait to tell me? He took a gentle breath. Because I wanted you to receive it on a day when you could believe you truly deserved it. A soft tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. Ethan stepped closer instinctively, then paused, giving her room to decide. When she did not pull away, he reached up and brushed the tear with his thumb. The touch was feather-light, careful, almost reverent. Her voice came out in a whisper. Thank you, Ethan. You do not need to thank me for recognizing the truth, he murmured. Their eyes locked again, and this time the air felt different, warm, charged, undeniable. Outside, the rain continued to fall softly against the glass, the world fading into a blur as something new settled between them. For the first time, Melissa realized that whatever was happening was no longer just healing. It was becoming something deeper. The next morning, Melissa woke with a strange mixture of nervousness and calm, a blend that made her heart beat just a little faster as she dressed for work. The memory of last night lingered like a warm echo, Ethan brushing away her tear with such gentleness, the softness in his eyes, the certificate he had given her at exactly the right moment, and the unspoken understanding that something between them had shifted into new territory. She got ready carefully, not to impress anyone, but because, for the first time in a long time, she wanted to feel good in her own skin. When she entered the office, several employees greeted her with warm congratulations about the award. Word had already spread. She smiled shyly, accepting each compliment, but the one person she secretly hoped to see was nowhere in sight. His office door was closed, the blinds drawn. It was unusual, but she did not want to disturb him. She focused on her tasks, though her thoughts drifted constantly to the memory of his touch, the steady warmth of his voice, and the way he had looked at her, as if she mattered more than she allowed herself to believe. A few hours later, an email arrived from Ethan asking her to bring documents to the 15th floor conference room. The message was brief, professional, but Melissa's heart still fluttered as she walked toward the elevator. When she stepped into the conference room, she froze. Ethan was there, alone, standing near the windows with the skyline behind him, and a look in his eyes she could not quite decipher. Thank you for coming, he said softly. She set the documents down and clasped her hands together, suddenly aware of the quickening of her breath. He walked toward her slowly, stopping at a respectful distance, but close enough that she felt the gravity between them. Melissa, there is something I need to say, he began, his voice steady but carrying a weight that made her pulse skip. Last night, the moment in my office. I have been thinking about it all morning. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. I have too, she admitted quietly. He exhaled, relieved. Good, because I need to be honest with you. What I feel for you did not begin yesterday. It did not begin when your ex came into the building. It did not even begin when you started working here. She blinked, unsure she heard him correctly. Then when? His expression softened with something deeper, something vulnerable. It began the first time you walked into my office, nervous but determined, trying so hard to prove yourself. You had no idea that your sincerity, your work ethic, and your kindness changed this entire place more than any leadership initiative ever could. Her breath caught as her chest tightened with emotion. Ethan continued carefully. But I never said anything because I am your boss. I wanted to maintain boundaries. I told myself it was enough to admire you quietly. But then you were hurt. And all I wanted was to help you heal, even if it meant keeping my feelings hidden. Melissa felt her stomach flutter with a mix of shock and understanding. She had sensed something changing between them, but not this, never this. Ethan, she whispered, I do not know what to say. You do not have to say anything yet, he replied gently. But I need you to know that none of this, none of my actions, none of my support, were out of pity. They were out of respect, and out of something more that I am willing to acknowledge only if you are willing to hear it. She lifted her eyes slowly, meeting his gaze fully. I am listening. His voice lowered. I care for you, Melissa. Not as your boss, not as a colleague, but as a man who has watched you fight through pain with dignity and strength. I care for you deeply. Her breath trembled. The words settled into her heart like a truth she had been afraid to hope for. But, Ethan added, I will not risk your comfort or your job for this. If you tell me you are not ready, I will step back, and nothing between us professionally will change. She took a long, steady breath. She thought of the heartbreak she had endured, the betrayal she had survived, the nights she had cried alone, and the way Ethan had been there, quietly, steadily, without ever asking for anything in return. And she realized that what she felt now was not fear. It was clarity. Ethan, she said softly, I am not ready for everything, but I am ready for honesty. And the truth is, I care about you too. His eyes widened just slightly, a flicker of hope breaking through the composure he always carried. You do? I do, she whispered. More than I expected to. More than I planned to. Ethan stepped closer, careful, slow, almost hesitant. Then tell me what you need. Tell me how to move forward in a way that feels safe for you. Melissa smiled softly, a genuine smile she had not felt in months. I need time. I need to rebuild myself. But I want you there while I do. Ethan let out a breath he had clearly been holding. Then I am exactly where I will be. And in that quiet conference room, with the city stretching endlessly behind them, something unspoken shifted into something undeniable. A promise, gentle and patient and real, forming in the space between their intertwined lives. The weeks that followed unfolded like a slow sunrise, gentle and steady, brightening Melissa's life one careful moment at a time. Nothing between her and Ethan rushed or spun out of control. Instead, everything grew with intention, like both of them understood that what they were building could not be hurried. They kept things professional at work, but there was a quiet warmth in every glance exchanged across the office, every soft smile passed during morning briefings, every moment when their hands brushed accidentally, and both of them paused just a little longer than necessary. Melissa was healing, piece by piece, and Ethan never pushed her to move faster than she was ready to. He supported her growth rather than substituting it, and that alone made him feel like someone she could trust with her heart. One Friday evening, Ethan invited her to attend a charity gala the company was sponsoring. It was not framed as a date. He made sure she knew that. It is simply an evening to celebrate the people you helped this quarter, he had said gently. And I would be honored if you joined me. Melissa agreed, not out of obligation, but out of a newfound confidence rising inside her. On the night of the event, she stood in front of her mirror wearing a simple, elegant navy dress she had saved up for over the last few weeks. She applied her makeup slowly, aware of the reflection looking back at her. She no longer saw the woman who had walked out of her ex's apartment shattered and small. She saw someone resilient, someone deserving of the life rebuilding itself around her. When she arrived at the gala, Ethan was waiting near the entrance. For a moment, he forgot how to breathe. He walked toward her with a softness in his eyes that said everything without words. You look, he paused, searching for the right expression. You look like the strongest person in this room. Her cheeks warmed, and she hooked her arm with his as they entered the ballroom. The night was filled with speeches, warm applause, and the hum of polite conversation beneath shimmering chandeliers. People praised Melissa's work, congratulated her on her award, and many nodded approvingly at the subtle but undeniable connection between her and Ethan. As the evening progressed, Melissa found herself drifting to the balcony for a moment of fresh air. The city lights sparkled below like scattered diamonds. She breathed in deeply, letting the cool night settle her emotions. A moment later, she heard the balcony door slide open. She did not need to turn to know who it was. Ethan stepped beside her, hands resting lightly on the railing, giving her space, but making it clear she was not alone. You did well tonight, he said softly. You carried yourself with confidence. It felt good, she admitted. It felt like I was finally stepping out of the shadow of everything that hurt me. Ethan turned to face her, his expression warm. You have rebuilt yourself beautifully. I am proud of you. She bit her lip, her voice softening. Ethan, there is something I want to ask. Anything. Are you sure about this? About us. About how complicated this could be. Ethan gently reached for her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. I am sure about you, he said. Everything else, we will navigate together. Her heart fluttered, not with fear this time, but with certainty. I care about you, she whispered. More and more every day. And I care about you. Ethan replied, his voice dipped in emotion. More than I have cared about anyone in a long time. The city breeze swept around them as he leaned just slightly closer, not demanding, not assuming, but offering. Melissa stepped into him, closing the distance between them. Their lips met in a soft, slow kiss that felt like a promise of healing, of new beginnings, of a love built not on desperation, but on respect, patience, and truth. When they parted, Ethan rested his forehead gently against hers. Whatever comes next, he whispered, you will never face it alone again. In that moment, Melissa knew she had not just survived heartbreak, she had transformed through it. She had found someone who saw her worth, who valued her strength, who held her heart with care rather than control. She looked up at Ethan, smiling softly. Let us begin again, she said. Together. And as they walked back into the warm glow of the ballroom hand in hand, Melissa realized the journey that began with betrayal had led her to something far more powerful. A love she did not have to chase. A love she did not have to beg for. A love that simply chose her in return.